So the poem that I'm going to read is called Leylene's Bill with Revisions for Leylene Cubile Polanco Extravaganza, an Afro-Dominican trans woman who was found dead in her jail cell at Rikers Island prison in June of 2019 while she was in solitary confinement. And I wanted to read this poem, because what it is a palimpsest. It's both a record of the bill that the city of New York attempted to pass in her name, but it's also a striking through and a rejecting of that bill and reimagining a world where Black trans people are actually free, happening on the page side by side next to each other. And sort of that graffiti element, that palimpsest element, I think is really relevant, not just to the struggles we saw this year, but the reimagining that we saw this year and the rejecting of the state's offers of reform and concession and actually putting forth much more radical visions for what Black people, trans people, immigrant people, poor and working class people actually require to be free and actually require to live full lives. And so that's sort of the spirit of this poem and why I wanted to share it today. Leylene's Bill with Revisions for Leylene Cubile Polanco Extravaganza. The New York City Council will pass a package of legislation expanding services for transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and intersex inmates. Scratch that. We'll turn out its pockets, never sign another ransom note. All officers with trans inmates in their custody will undergo a competency training. Scratch that. We'll have their badge numbers etched off with diamond-tipped acrylics, aquamarine. New beds will be added to the transgender housing unit. Scratch that. Beds of wildflowers will erupt from lots that were not vacant, just holding their breath. Counselors will be made available to all trans inmates. Scratch that. We are each our sister's counsel. The Board of Correction will convene a task force. Scratch that. We'll be tasked with something useful, like beekeeping or collecting rainwater. Sex workers will have their cases diverted to human sex trafficking intervention court. Scratch that. We'll spray paint the words, "We are the intervention," on the courthouse rubble. The Rikers Island compound will be replaced by a series of smaller, borough-based facilities. Scratch that. We'll slip into the rising Atlantic, the ribs of our dead prepared to cage it. Trans elders will be held in solitary confinement for their own safety. Scratch that. We'll have their charcoal locks retwisted in chosen hands. This legislation will take effect in the summer of 2020. Scratch that. We have never asked permission to sing.